Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. On today's video I'm going to look at using Chameleon Sampler to record and sample your synthesizers, whether they be hardware or software. I'll look at why we might want to do that and obviously how. So let's get on with it. So if we look on AppsList, we can see that Chameleon AUv3 Sampler plugin is, it says on here $6.99 UK pounds. It's actually $6.99 US dollars. I think it'll be slightly cheaper in the UK. It's just AppsList doesn't update for the different currency. But what's really clever with Chameleon is the way it can use MIDI to control the synthesizer. So it automates the whole process of sampling that synthesizer. So why might you want to do this? Well, in the case of a hardware synthesizer, especially an analog one, where there aren't presets which you can just hit a button and there they appear. The only other way of effectively saving a sample, or saving a patch, sorry, would be to take a photograph of where all the knobs and dials are. And so when you next wanted to create that patch, you'd then look at your photograph, adjust all the knobs and dials to those points, and it should be broadly the same. It might not be quite the same. And that's fine in a studio, but not so useful if you're playing live, because it would take time to actually set the synth up in between each song, which obviously isn't very fluid in the show. So by sampling a synthesizer this way, you can effectively bring that hardware into software. Now, the limitation on this is you're taking a snapshot of a particular sound. So something that evolves over time. You'd obviously have to take big samples, and certainly anything that involves sort of adjusting knobs or affecting stuff with modulation wouldn't necessarily work that well. But to get a simple sound, this is a way forward by sampling. So what we're going to do is we'll fire up AUM and look at the software itself. Now, I've talked about hardware synths. My thinking for doing this video actually came from an issue with a software synth. See, last week, Synthmaster 2, it's a synth I use quite a lot in my live shows, had an update, and somewhere along the way it managed to break some of the sounds that I use. And I've since managed to fix them, but in the meantime, KV Audio are working on an update to actually fix that. So possibly by the time this video goes out, it will all be resolved. But it got me thinking in terms of, if I've got sounds which I really depend on, can I sample them and back them up effectively so I can then use them? Now you might counter that with, well, hang on a minute, Synthmaster has a Rompler, the Synthmaster player, where you can get hold of all these sounds. And that, whilst that's very true, the downside I found with Synthmaster Player is it's quite resource heavy, and certainly on my kit, what tends to happen is if there's too much going on, the audio crackles and pops, which again isn't ideal for a live show. Okay, let's get into AUM and start looking at what's going on. Okay, so we're in AUM now, and what I'm going to do to begin with is we'll open up a audio unit, and yeah, let's use Synthmaster Player as an example, because this is the one which I ended up doing last week in order to make sure my live show would work with the sounds as anticipated. So that's opened up. We will connect a keyboard to it in the normal way. And then we'll go into the effects slot and we'll load Chameleon. So it's the music effect plugin AU. We don't need the inter-app audio. Now the first thing we're going to do is make sure that the MIDI is linked between Chameleon and Synthmaster Player. And this is useful because it means we can automate the sampling process. So what we do is we go up to the MIDI routing in the top right hand corner of AUM, and we will select the Chameleon going through to Synthmaster Player, which is that one there. So we've made all the connections. We just now need to actually set up the software. So first of all, let's just see if we've got some sound. We haven't. I wonder why that could be. Well, what we need to do is go into Chameleon and turn on monitor. It gives you a warning just in case that you're on monitors and you get a feedback loop. So we've got some sounds now. So let's just go for a lead. Right. So, quite a nice sound, one I do use in some of my tracks. So, that's loaded in Synth Master Player. We fire up Chameleon, and what we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves a new sample. Okay, we're just coming from the editing suite at the moment. Well, who am I kidding? It's the same place, but I'm in post-editing mode. Anyway, when I put together that video, I managed to record straight over my init patch. You don't want to do that. That's a really stupid thing to do. So what you need to do is when you want to create your new sample, you go to this top right-hand corner plus. Well, actually, we'll switch to the user bank. We'll go to this top right-hand corner button. We press that, and we go for create new preset. Put your name of your preset in. Create. Now we'll go back and do what I should have done, but not on the init patch. You get the drift. So we'll go into the bottom left-hand corner to this record button. We'll hit record, and it asks you to set the trigger level above background noise, then press record. So this is just making sure that the sampler can hear the synth that you're trying to sample from. So we'll... Okay, so the trigger level seems to be fine. We can see the little monitor on the right-hand side. Now, what we need to do is set up the auto sample. So if we hit auto sample, we get a number of options. We can set the note length. So this is how long the Chameleon is going to hold each note down to create the sample. It has a trail time, so it then lets go of that note and records what happens after that. You can then split your note spacing up. So this is currently spacing an octave apart. So obviously, the more notes that you sample, the longer it will take, obviously, but also the more space it will take up. However, the more samples you take, the less interpolation between those samples is required. Now, with really plain sounds that don't have too many overtones, you might get away with using quite large sample gaps, because when you interpolate between, say, middle C and the C above, the note sort of changes in a linear fashion. What tends to happen with a lot of sounds is the overtones change throughout the different octaves. So if you start to interpolate too far, the sound can start to get a little bit weird, a little bit stretched, especially if you're trying to use a sound which is modeling an acoustic instrument. So what we'll do is we'll drop it down to 5 semitones. We've got a pause in between each of the samples. It's going to record a velocity, and again, this is potentially one problem if you've got a sound or a synth that is velocity dependent, in that you'll get a different timbre depending on the velocity. This will only record one velocity for that note, so that's something to bear in mind. We then have a start and end point, so we've got 7 octaves here. So you can change that note by note. So 7 octaves should be plenty for most people. You've basically got the whole keyboard. So once we've got that, we can hit continue, and it will come up with a prompt and say it will now record a series of notes from the connected MIDI keyboard. Press start. So off we go. So you can actually hear it playing the notes as we're going along. You can see each time it's recording a separate sample for each note. Right, so that's all gone through. It says sampling completed successfully. And what we'll do is we'll save this as a preset. So on the right hand side of the screen, we've got a preset save button. We want to save this preset, and it saved it. I think we probably saved it as the init, have we? Is that what's happened? Yep, we've got a new init. Never mind, I will fix that in post. So anyway, we've now got a preset that's recorded into this. Let's rename it. There we go. New sample. There we go. Rename. There we go. So if we then come out of Chameleon here, and let's close that channel down so it's not doing anything. If we open a new audio channel and we open an audio unit, and we'll open Chameleon as an instrument this time. We'll connect Chameleon to the MIDI keyboard, go into it, go into user, and you see we've got our new sample here. So I'm now playing the MIDI keyboard and it's playing this sample. It's currently set as monophonic. We could make it polyphonic. So we've now sampled that synth, and what we should find, let's have a look at, if we play Chameleon. 1.7% synth master is using about 30%. So you can see where this might be really useful if you've got a load of quite involved sounds that you're using from something like Synth Master Player, and your hardware is maybe not as up to date as it could be. This is one way that you'd be able to save a little bit of resource. So, okay, that was pretty interesting. What we'll have a quick look now is doing something with hardware. We'll start a new project, and the audio, we're going to have a hardware input this time, which is that. So that's just whatever I had the Model D set on last time I used it. It's not the most amazing sound. It's a sound. Now, as I said before, if I wanted to recreate this sound in hardware, I'd have to make sure I had an image of where all the dials were on the synth itself, so I could twist them around to be in the same place, which, if you're trying to do it quickly, is a bit of a faff. So we do the same thing again. We fire up a Chameleon in the effects slot. We then connect Chameleon to the Model D. So the Model D is down there. There we go. So Chameleon can now play the Model D. And what we'll do is we'll go into user. There we go. Put the monitor on. And monophonic is fine because it's a monosynth anyway. Let's add a new sample. Create new presets. Call that Model D, because there's only one sample in Model D. And it says press record to sample. Right, we're going to go into the record screen again, set the trigger level above background noise. Change the trigger level with this, with that. Right, so we're going to fire up auto sample again. We're not going to do 7 octaves this time because this is going to be a bass, I've decided. So let's just do 3 octaves, and we'll do them an octave apart. So it's only going to do 3. So we're going through exactly the same process as before. Auto sample. That's our first one. So you can see how it's important to actually work out exactly the notes that you want when you're sampling. Because some of these early ones really aren't particularly useful sounds. But there we go. We've just taken 4 samples, so it was dead quick. And that's our Model D playing. So if we save that as a preset, do we want to save it? We do, but we don't really, but you get the drift. Let's disconnect the Model D. So hit the keyboard, no sounds, and we'll fire up Chameleon again. We'll connect the keyboard to it. And we'll go into our user bank. And actually, there it is, Model D. So I'm playing the keyboard, and it's now playing that synth itself without actually needing to have the hardware attached to it. Anyway, I thought that might be useful for you to see, and hopefully it gives you an idea of how you might be able to sample your own synths. As always, if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you enjoy this video, please hit that like. It does help tell YouTube that people are watching the video, and will hopefully help with the algorithm on that. If you're a subscriber, great. If you're not, please do subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video. Take care now.